Hey everyone, Greg here. As you may know by now, I'm the co-founder and CEO of TripShock, an online reseller for water sports and tours. For the past 12 years, we've had the pleasure of working with hundreds of operators across the country, and we're looking to grow our community. It's free to sign up, and you only pay when we bring you confirmed bookings. We'll help you reach new customers, fill empty seats, and grow your business like so many have done with us over the years. Head over to partners.tripshock.com to learn more about our program, read testimonials, or speak directly with our supply team. As always, thank you for listening and enjoy the show.
They come to relax, enjoy the beach, have fun, and spend money. And that's where we come in. This is the Awkward Watersport Guys podcast. Find out tips on the best ways to market and operate a water sports business. If you're a water sports operator, you need to grow your brand, operate more safely, upgrade your operations, and of course, increase bookings. We're industry veterans, broadcasting from Destin, Florida. This is the Awkward Watersport Guys podcast, and this is Kevin O'Neill and Greg Fisher.
When we got this show started, we were like really struggling to figure out like what our concept, like what we were going to call ourselves. Remember that? And like we were just like, oh, like the Awkward Water Sports Guy, because it was like really awkward and weird to kind of be on air for the first time. But I want to say that you have taken this Awkward Water Sports Guys thing. Last week, you started the show off talking about Glee and how you dance around and sing Glee songs. Like, and then this week,
why are you bringing this back?
Because
I had enough people make fun of me this week. This
week, you introed our guest by calling him the king of everything, and I just thought it was really funny because we're talking about hacks this episode, and I thought you were going to call him the king of hacks, but you called him the king of everything, and I just felt it really played in well to your awkward ethos and personality, and it really played well, but it came out like just naturally, and
I was going to edit that out, but now I'm leaving it in. And Ryan's probably listening and like, all right, you know,
it's the king of everything.
He should be leaving that in. All right.
No hubris for poor Ryan rather. But anyway, with that being said, the episode is about hacks. Ryan's got a lot of incredible hacks. The first 20 minutes, I was in awe of how many hacks he had, and we didn't really get to talk about any of the hacks that we use. But Greg, I know you yourself are a fan of hacks, and why don't you tell our listeners if you have one hack that you can't live without?
Okay,
what is
so
it?
The one hack that I can't live without is an app called RoboKiller, and it's $3 a month. And let me tell you what this app does, because I absolutely love it, because it really helps me with my productivity, but it's also a form of entertainment. So the app uses a database of known spammers and bots to block a lot of those telemarketers from calling you, political calls, whatever. But it also allows you to store some of that, your own telemarketers locally in this app. So if they call, it blocks them out. But the cool thing about this is that when those people keep calling, it uses an answering service within the app that uses character voices like Donald Trump or Barack Obama, or one of them that I like is Sylvia Vergara, just his annoying voice. So it answers the phone in the background, and it uses these character voices to talk to the telemarketers, and it records the messages. I'm going to just show a sample of one of those right now.
My name is Alex. I'm calling from Decaf Research.
It's a little hard for me to understand you. Can you go slow? But don't go too slow, because that makes me crazy.
Okay. Hello, my name is Alex. I'm calling from
Listen,
Decaf
I'm very,
Research.
very busy. I'm in a feeding. Just talk faster. Can you do that?
He hung up. Jesus. You notice how he talks? After he breaks in, he talks slower.
Yeah, and then he's like, but it's really funny how he's like, you could tell he's like reading from a script. You know what I mean? He's like, okay, hello, my name is Alex. Like, oh my God, dude, that's pretty funny, man.
I'll sit there for hours and just not even realize the time passing by listening to all those recorded calls. So it's perfect. So for $3, what better? You get more productivity. You got to deal with all the spam, and then you get to listen to all the craziness. But if you go on their website, they actually have like the best of the recordings from other people that submit them. So it's pretty cool.
What's the app called?
RoboKiller. So we have an awesome interview with Ryan Turner today. Ryan is the owner of Your Biker Gang. It's a franchise bike tour business. They're located in Austin, Texas, and Panama City, Florida. Ryan also happens to be the VP of product at TripShock. He's so much more than that. He's a really smart dude. So why don't we listen in?
Let's go. Let's get awkward.
All right, we're here today with Ryan Turner, and Ryan Turner is the VP of product at TripShock. He's also the owner of yourbikergang.com out of Austin and Panama City, Florida. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me, guys. Appreciate it.
Before we really get down the rabbit hole with all this, just take a couple minutes to talk about where you came from and where you are now.
The skinny of it is I've been in software for a long time. Kind of life-changing events for me were started a company called Glad to Have You that was a hospitality mobile app in the vacation rental space. So it's in tourism and vacations and clearly vacation rentals. That got purchased, started that with some friends, got purchased by HomeAway, moved essentially my family and all my friends' families because I work with my friends to Austin, Texas. Yeehaw. And then HomeAway got bought by Expedia. So things get large quick. So from a company of 35 people that we started to HomeAway, which was 3,500, to Expedia, which was 35,000. It was a wild, wild ride. Worked there for a number of years, and then finally decided I'm just tired of the rat race. I prefer something that I can make a greater impact in. So I quit and honestly didn't know what I would do. Kind of was at a turning point where I didn't know what I wanted to do when I grew up, right? And grant you, I was like 40. But it's a great moment. I accidentally fell into creating a tour company. I created an electric vehicle. Didn't have the greatest success selling it. Ended up pivoting and doing tours. So everyone wanted to demo and ride this vehicle, but it wasn't. It was before electric bikes were big here. Not cheap, right? So it was essentially like a motorcycle replacement, and it's not an easy thing to sell. You need a lot of infrastructure, but everyone wanted to ride one. So what did I do? Quickly pivot to a tour company and charge them to ride it. That's how I started yourbikergang.com. I didn't know what I was doing as a tour operator, but I remember with my work at HomeAway and Expedia and meeting Greg, I was really impressed by him and his knowledge with TripShock and what he's built. Then I called him up and said, can I get half an hour of your time? Well, the dude gave me a full hour and some, gave me a ton of wisdom. And then said like, hey, what are you doing now? And I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. I don't know. I'm doing this right now. He's like, well, you want to come work for TripShock? I'm like, I don't know. Make me an offer. And the rest is history. So become great friends and partners in a number of ventures. And that's where I'm at today.
Ryan, let's start this off because there's something you said in that past minute or so that I think is a good starting point. So you say your business name is yourbikergang.com. And you have a reason why you do that. And it's kind of like it is a hack, right? And that's kind of like our show, digital hacks, for small businesses. Tell us about that and why you decided to call it .com.
Yeah, the legal name is yourbikergang.com for a number of reasons. One, I wanted something that stood out and was kind of edgy. And then the .com is kind of Your Biker Gang is kind of something that's edgy. The .com is the punchline. So everything we do from a brand perspective, you'll see has a badass portion and then a funny portion. And we slam them together all the time in everything we do. However, the very specific reason is because I knew that affiliation mattered. I knew my company was going to be listed on TripShock and TripAdvisor, Expedia, you name it. And if they ever have to list your legal name, mine's a website. And that leads to immediate leakage. Don't tell TripAdvisor. Hopefully they don't listen to this. But when your name is listed there and it's not, let's just say, Your Biker Gang LLC or something, they see yourbikergang.com, and that obviously leads them to want to go find out more information on it. I also it's not easy to trademark, a biker gang or your biker gang. It's just too generic. So it's much easier to do very specific things. But yes, it is a ploy to get leakage off of affiliates.
Damn you.
Hey, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah, well, hey, it worked in some instances, right? Did
It
other
absolutely works.
OTAs did they change the name once?
Oh, they're always changing it, and we're always fighting them, saying we don't own those. That's something else. Go Google that, and it might be something else. This is specific to us. Also, when your name is essentially a call to action, right? It's big. So when you see people driving around with or a sign or a trailer or a pin or whatever it may be with yourbikergang.com right on it, it's very obvious that you should go to the website and learn more. There's no wonder how I get more information about that company.
Yeah, it takes the whole guesswork out of it. Well,
yeah.
So, you in our pre-show, you talked about a handful of different topics that we can go down. And so I guess the first one is standing out, right? With having .com at the end of your domain, which is awesome. I think it makes a lot of sense. Even not for just OTAs, but just like, let's say review sites like Yelp or Google My Business. I mean, it's easy to see that name and then being able to just Google it real fast and finding it. There's no question of whether or not where it lives. And we just did an episode on domains, was it the last one or the one before that, about how, your domain name has to be unique, because if your domain name is Bike Tours, and, using those nouns, people can go to Google and type them. You're competing with a lot of businesses that are related to that name. Like, people think they're like real tricky of getting these high value nouns, but in the end, they're going to Google businesses rather than going to the address bar where they should be.
I totally agree, but I also think that a lot of operators miss the mark on retention. They just think there's a never-ending flow of tourists that come. And in many situations, that's the case, but they don't focus on retention. And retention is the art of getting someone back, right? And it starts with a great experience. That's kind of obvious. Let's fast forward beyond. You can't suck, right? Let's fast forward beyond that. A lot of times travelers will have done something, let's just say rented a pontoon boat or bikes or whatnot. And someone asks you, they come back, statistically they come back to the same areas again and again, year after year. If you ask them where they rented bikes from, like, I don't know the place, I know where it's located, I don't know the name of it or whatnot. You don't want to be that business. You don't ever want to be the business where people look back and, they had a good experience and still can't even pinpoint you or know your name, right? You're missing the mark if that's the case. Because this is a water sports thing, I can relate to a number of things in water sports. Water sports are generally highly concentrated in a harbor or marina type of situation where you only have a little bit of real estate, and there's probably regulations on where you can put signage and everything. But the guys that really have it nailed, all of their staff stands out. Their ticket booth stands out. Where you're supposed to park stands out. The boats that you rent stand out. If they give you towels or sunglasses or any number of other things, those are just other ways to stand out. So both digital and physical. Obviously, you can do a lot of remarketing and retention stuff, but the physical stuff you can't miss it. And it doesn't take a whole lot. So in your biker gang, we do a number of things to do this, and I'll give you some examples. One, when a guest comes to us, we never tell them they're provided anything. We always try to under-promise and over-deliver, but you're immediately provided bandanas. I have a number of reasons on those and why I can get into that. I think we should talk about virality here at some point as well. But we also wear specific helmets with specific goggles. I don't know if Greg has seen what we do, but you look like a legitimate biker gang, and you wear goggles that looks like you could go 100 miles an hour, but you're only going 19, okay? And all those things are important to stand out. We're called road captains, which are biker gang guides. They look the part, always have their equipment on, signs, business cards, flyers, and stuff on their bike. But also, number one driver is the back of their T-shirt. Right? It says as we cruise by these tourism places, right? They're all watching what we do, watching our people have a great time, and wondering how they can book as well. That's huge.
During the cruises, I mean, I went on one and I had a blast, but there's a lot of different things that people do while they're on it, like the horns, they make horns on all the sides. Yeah. But you're like in a viral video, and you got hundreds and hundreds of people, and I'm sure like a lot of tour companies, it's probably the same way. Like, there's a tour on the harbor, the Sequest. And I don't know, Kevin, if you saw them, but they literally are dancing for the entire time. Music's blasting. Anyone that looks at it, they're creating virality right there in the harbor. Everyone's watching it. How do you take that and get it online, get this to customers, because you're creating these incredible moments on your tours, and how do you take this and create create viral promotions online? Like what systems would you use and what processes?
Yeah, great question. So once again, fast forward over the fact that you're having a great experience, right? If they're not having a great experience and it's not Instagram worthy, then you need to rethink your experience. And I can't give you advice, like generic advice. It's so specific to what your people do, right? And what product you're offering and the service you're doing. But for us, it all starts with our workflow. Everything is thought out. Every little step we do, every way, like the place you park, everything is thought out. And at that point in time, we give you the bandana, not only for a takeaway and to make you feel like part of a gang. It's an icebreaker, for one. We did this pre-COVID, right? But it's when people are like, hey, we don't want to wear masks, like, hey, just put your bandana over it. Biker gangs wear bandanas. And we play all sorts of jokes around, what if we see another gang on the road? You don't want them to know who you are. Protect your identity, right? There's no limit to how far we'll go, even to the fake tattoos and things like this. It's pretty funny. That all makes people get out of their element, right? Breaks the ice, gets them interested in having fun and recognizing they're no longer, you're no longer Greg Fisher, the CEO of Trip Shock. You're Greg Fisher, the biker gang member. And it's absolutely a parody, right? The main thing that changes with our flow is we choose to do this, and I'm not recommending it for everybody. We tell our customers to keep their phones in their pocket. For one, they're on an electric bike tour, and we don't want them trying to text or take photos while in motion. So it's a safety thing first and foremost. But secondarily, it makes our guides essentially the paparazzi of the whole experience. It also makes certain it goes through our flow. So we're not waiting for a number of groups to stand in front of something and take photos and then another group to get involved and do so. We're actually able to control the tempo of our whole experience.
So Ryan, more specifically, once you create those viral memories, what do you do with that? Like, how can you take and turn it into dollars or customers?
That's right. So this we've figured out how to do for almost free. And so this has worked out really well for us. For one, we run our whole business on Google products. It's like $5 a user per month. And with that, we get an enormous amount of Google photo storage. Every single person in our company creates content. Because they are the photographer on the tour, we teach them how to take photos. It's an important thing. As a business owner, I watch these photos. When the tour is done, they're automatically uploaded to two places. Road Captain does this as part of their workflow. One, it goes to the Facebook photo gallery on our Facebook page. Our guests are text message telling them that they can leave a review and access these photos via Facebook. Let's just stop there for a second, because now ensuring they go to our Facebook page does a number of things, right? Encourages them to follow. It makes it very easy to tag themselves or tag their loved ones in the photos, and of course, very easy to share. That's a big deal, right?
So you said you're getting them to the Facebook page by sending them an email, letting them know that they have and a text message that they have photos that they can view. Okay.
And you better believe they're not forgetting about us at that point. We've got their photos. You know how the moment we publish and send that message, they click and visit. They're excited to see, right? They had a great time. They're excited to share. You're almost creating a sense of, especially in today's society where they're Instagram stories, right? They're very instant, and you're almost creating an anticipation for them to see those photos. It's like the gift after the gift. It's a pretty cool thing, and it allows us to control the flow of media. And media, quite honestly, is everything. The other place our road captains upload it to is Google Photos. This is for internal usage. This allows us to search, to process, to review, to look at things. We can tell on a ride how engaged the travelers were. We can see how engaging the road captain was. We have photos where, they're just insane. We've got, in 100-degree weather, we've got groups of eight guests holding up a sweaty road captain horizontally, getting highly engaged in these activities. And you think about what had to go down on that. They had to trust him. They had to be willing to pick up this sweaty guy. And they had to get a random bystander to take the photo of everybody. Right? Like, this is the highly engaged group. And so as a business owner, we can see these. And then to answer the other part of your question is, how do you turn this into dollars? So if your company's continually generating content as part of what it does, not a random thing later, right? Or hire a photographer later. Now you've got a continual, never-ending influx of media and photos to choose from. So if you want to do a new brochure or a new Facebook ad, or let's give you a very specific example, in Google Photos, if I want to go to create a Facebook ad specifically for Father's Day or Mother's Day or whatever, I can go into Google Photos, look for father-son, and look through hundreds of photos we have with that specific example, pull from that resource, and create those ads.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're never short media. In fact, we've joked before and said we could, from a marketing perspective, we could stop taking photos right now and be good from a marketing perspective for at least a year. We just have that much content.
So with that content, other than using it for getting followers and for retention purposes, for people to share it with their family, how are you taking that and creating, turning it into dollars, like trackable dollars?
The trackable dollars is our advertising campaigns, because you may not realize it. I can't really point out any of our ads that have anyone paid in it. All of them are guests. So and they're real, they're legitimate, they're authentic. You can tell when someone's doing a fake smile and when they're having a blast, right? So given those medias, our ad quality is very, very high. Our Instagram post quality and Facebook stuff is very, very high. We can create videos very quickly based upon those. And all of this ad spend is tracked. Our return on ad spend is fairly good. I would say it's great, but I know other people that do better than us.
It seems like everything in your strategies, whether it comes down to operational or marketing, always ends up serving like dual purpose. So
everything.
And then it's like the bandana thing, and not to sound like cold or like callous or anything, but COVID's serving my marketing plan. You know what I mean? Like, holy shit.
Exactly right.
This guy was doing like bandanas before it was, or face coverings before it was like mandatory now, like make sure you put up your mandatory yourbiker.com, and it's yourbikergang.com face covering. But yeah, no, I'm here. It's really interesting that you've been able to, you scale everything in your business, and it's like, I'm actually just sort of blown away, and that's why I'm quiet. Usually I talk a lot because I feel like I'm the smartest guy in the room, but when somebody is much, much smarter than me, I just shut the fuck up and listen, man. So I'm here. I'm taking notes on on my window, like Mark Zuckerberg or like A Beautiful Mind, like it's like the algorithms are presenting themselves to me as you're speaking. No, man, it's crazy. Like you should write a book.
Kevin, I was thinking, I don't know if this would be a lot of work for your guys, but every time your group either leaves or is coming back on a boat, take a picture and just pop that onto Facebook and shoot them a review text with a link to your Facebook to go get their photo and share it. Like, that's probably the most simple thing you can do from a marketing perspective, that I don't think it would be much work for your guys. I mean, I know that they run ragged, but it's just, I thought that was really cool what Ryan does. And when I went on my tour, I loved those photos. Those photos were awesome. I shared them with all my family and friends. It's like he basically got like 100 eyeballs from those photos, right, just from me alone.
From each trip.
Yeah.
And so the crazy part is it may seem, some of these things are look, none of them cost anything. Okay? None of these things are expensive. But they're just well thought out. And I can't take credit for this. My team are the guys in the trenches, the guys on the street, the guys making it all happen. And as a business owner, I just listen and empower. They've heard me say a number of times that I work for them. My job is to make certain that their roadblocks go away. And when they've and listen to ideas as they come up, and then ask the right questions. And that's it. It's not like I'm the guy with all the amazing ideas. I have creative solutions to the problems that they've brought to me, right? That's it.
Yeah, and you're
listen to your people.
A super strong like corporate culture as well, because and that point, like, not only you're really, it sounds like you're empowering your team to not only like create these amazing experiences and provide experiences to your customers, but you're also empowering them to want to to see the vision of the company and to see your end goals. And now they're not, they're not working for you. They're working with you, and you guys are all like driving that. You guys are all that engine together, and it's really a testament to really good leadership on your part.
I was going to ask you, go into measurement, because we were talking about tracking, because I know this is something that before you came and started working at TripShock, I did not do very well, if anything at all, really, other than Google Analytics, right? And you came in and really opened my mind when it comes to tracking and how important it is. And, so if you just expound on some of the measurements and some tools that are just real easy that can give you the information you need, or tools that people typically use, and see if, are we using them right?
Yeah, well, some things are easily measured, some things are not. And I have a couple core principles that I always try to measure myself on, right? So kind of like tenets, if you will. A couple of those are one, if it's not measurable, it's probably not worth doing. And there are exceptions to this, but I always try to put something against this. Like if my guys have an idea and they're like, should we do this billboard on the other side of town? Or should we get in this magazine? Should we do these rack cards? These are always tough questions, right? And there's all a huge FOMO, fear of missing out, especially if you're already doing something, and should we not do that anymore? Is that expense worthwhile? And I always go, can I measure it? If you can't measure it, I would argue you shouldn't be doing it. Now, there are ways to measure each and one of the things I just discussed, but I'm not going to go into those details. I'm just saying, if you can't measure the success or failure it has on your business, probably not worth spending time on, right? Because it either doesn't matter, or you're not going to know if you're doing well or doing bad. Measurement is key to what you do. Some things are easy to measure, right? You can measure your website traffic. You can look at your website sources. You can look at your ad spend. Some things get a little trickier, especially with reservation systems, but measuring your conversion on those campaigns does get a little trickier. But you should also be doing physical things, inventory, maintenance. If you don't know if that, which of those outboard motors is causing you most grief and which brand causes you most grief over the long term, or what employees or routes tend to have the greatest number of incidents or injuries or things like this, you're not running your business very well.
Well, hey, now I do want to jump in, because this is something that myself and my partner, we get into all the time. And because I absolutely agree with you. And so like from a marketing standpoint and return on ad spend, your Google Analytics, your even Facebook, not to the degree that Google has the measuring tools. So that stuff is all pretty, I'm not going to say easy, but for us guys in this room, we know that it's not super hard. But when you start talking about intangible things like product, like, do you feel that sometimes you start going down like a rabbit hole of something that's really hard to quantify? So if you say like a particular, so you're using, I'm assuming like a proprietary or a very specific bike you guys are using in, mybikergang.com. So, but if you weren't, let's just say, for example, we're talking to a different bike tour guy, and we start going down this rabbit hole of like bike brands or engine brands, whatever the example you want to use. All right, use engine brands, for example. So, or bikes. And so you say like the bike frame has a durability of X and can last whatever, but brand B, you're replacing small things, or you're replacing the bike itself, and you can do that with any product, A versus X. So at what point do you start going like, well, okay, so we're going down this rabbit hole, and now we've measured it, and then the result is negligible. So this is how my brain works. Then I start measuring the time that I spent on something, that it's like, well, we just came down to like a 0.07% difference in product or inventory, whatever it has been, but we spent hours trying to figure that out. Like a cost benefit analysis.
Yeah. So first of all, you can't get to that level of analytics unless you're tracking it, right? So you haven't even earned the right to get to the party. For you guys who are listening and be like, oh wow, I don't track any of that. Yeah, you can't even be part of this party, right? You have to go track it. Where does tracking become,
neurosis?
I guess your question is, insane. Okay.
Yeah. And then, I guess my question ultimately was like, well, what tools and what tools are you using for example, for inventory? So that's what brings to mind. So like, what kind of tools do you use for inventory?
Perfect. So we use a product called Monday.com. It is an incredibly flexible ticketing system. It can really do anything you want. It's incredibly flexible. It's not an ad for Monday.com. Teamwork.com is a great one too, and you just need a number of things, right? But we have every one of our pieces of equipment is an asset that we track in Monday.com, and it has a status. It's operational, right? Or it needs repair, or it's on hold, or it's broken, or it's getting warranty maintenance. And that particular piece of equipment will get worked on it by our people. So that if it needs repair, it'll get a person assigned to it, and they fix it and they track their time on it. In general, let's give you a real practical example because we all know bicycle. Bicycle tires wear out. We used to be able to go 2 years on a tire. We switched vehicles entirely, and we can go 6 months on a tire. The tire themselves are cheaper now, but the actual major cost is someone switching it. It's not just a matter of an electric bike's a little more complicated than your standard, but it takes no more than 30 minutes to replace a tire. But those add up if we're doing it all the time over a fleet of 60 bikes, right? And so now we're going, hey, should we get a tire that lasts twice as long and is twice as expensive? When I look at it, I can tell you that the cost of the tire is negligible. It's the cost of us keeping the pressure and replacing them. It is the human cost is more money than the tire. So get the best tire, no demand. Yep. Right? I can make those decisions because we've got the data. If we didn't have it, I'd have no idea, right?
For sure. So, and I'm sorry, I want to go back a couple steps though. So was this like, did you figure this out through process of elimination? Like, you started tracking obviously from the beginning, but were there things that you came into already intuitively knowing, like, I mean, did you have to figure that out? Like, all my guys are spending X amount of time on working on these tires. So from now on, we're buying these biker tires. Or did your business model and your business plan already take this into account before you got up and running?
We cheated initially. One of the smartest things Greg told us to do is give your customer options. And one of those options we gave them was a cover your butt thing. It was like $10 and it covered like $1,000 of damage to equipment, and we'd get like a 30% take rate on it, which was very high. And you're like, well, that's like free money, right? If you don't get much equipment damage. And because we're tours, not rentals, we had very little equipment damage. That we got lucky. That amount of money we got just in that little pool of people hitting a checkbox to say, yeah, add $10 to my ticket. Actually covered all of our maintenance costs for that vehicle for the lifetime of the vehicle, which was great, including the parts and the labor to fix those. That was a significant, one of the smartest things, best tips Greg ever gave me.
Is that a tricky from an insurance standpoint? I mean, so you can't legally call it insurance then. I mean, what do you call it?
Coverage. Yeah,
yeah,
just damage coverage.
Well, we call it CYA, and we never write out what that means, right?
Right.
And we're like concerned about hurting the vehicle. Well, with this, have peace of mind, right? And that's honestly, I have a hard time peddling these little add-ons and things until I try them. And then I realize, well, hey, actually, a number of people actually improves their experience. They could be more free and have more fun and be less stressed while they're actually on their experience, knowing that they purchased that piece. If that enhances the experience, I want to offer that, right?
You know what it also did? I don't know if it did it for you, Ryan, but for us, we had less damage on the folks that took that damage insurance. I don't know why it worked out that way, but it's almost like they were being a little extra careful because they spent this extra money. So I don't have anything to do with it. But another thing that kind of worked out with this, now we made money. People just seem to feel better about the whole process. Now, if it was boats or anything high value, I would be a little more concerned. I mean, Kevin, I'm sure you have some thoughts about that because boats are $30,000, $40,000. Jet ski is $6,000 to $9,000. So there's that.
So, to put things in context, an electric vehicle that we use is about $2,000. And just to put people listening, they recognize there's no way we could do that, bro. I get that. Right. My stuff's not that expensive. But to get to Kevin's point, what he asked me is we totally cheated. That little checkbox was enabled for us to cover that cost. If it wasn't an accounted for business expense, then we would have been in more trouble early on, especially as we started and didn't know what our maintenance, was going to be. Right. Now we do know what our maintenance is, and in reality, it's a very small portion of our business.
And now I want to take another step back into something else because the pictures. So did you run all right, so you use these pictures as a way for people to share, to help you market, to cut back your marketing costs. You're not hiring photographers, all great stuff. Now, did you ever think about actually selling a professional photo package?
Great question. And this has been brought up a number of times. And I've had people like Greg, take our experience and give me great feedback, and, a lot of other, very smart people. And they say they'd be willing to purchase something. But we had yet to crack that nut. And I'll tell you why. One, if we use high-end phones, so we force everyone, in our company to have a decent phone. It's public mockery inside our company if you've got an old phone. He yelled at me and I'm like, I love my phone. But even our road captains have, or especially our road captains have, decent phones.
That's a double-edged sword because then they can have a Google Pixel or whatever it's called. It's like the greatest camera, but a total shit phone.
That's right. So what happens is, because it's in Google Photos and we can see them all, right? We're actually sharing. We use a Slack to chat as a company, and that's how our reservationists contact our guides and prep things, and that's how management discusses things. Because we're all remote, and then half the guys are on the road at any particular point in time. We trained everybody how to take photos. We've actually hired people to do their job as a road captain. I'm like, do you have any photography experience? And when you start making that a question in your interviewing process, people light up. They're like, well, actually, I've got 1,500 followers. I'm kind of a big deal. We're like, oh, okay, interesting. Or they'll be like, I'm actually a drone operator, or I'm a wedding photographer on the side. You never know until you start asking your people. So that's just start there. And then secondarily, we felt that if we'd screw up our flow, if we did staged photos that were attempted to be high end that we were going to sell, we thought we'd have to use DSLRs. When we surveyed people, we actually surveyed guests about photos, and they said they would be willing to pay something, but they'd have to be high quality and printable. And we're currently, Kevin, we're weighing the option of, do we withhold something from them, right? Just give them a sample of photos and withhold something for them, such that they would purchase at the end of the experience, via Facebook or wherever we host the images, to get the either watermarks removed or higher quality print versions. And we kind of felt the consensus was that if we were going to sell photos, they'd have to be done with the DSLR, not with a phone.
Correct.
And it's perception.
Well, yeah, because you can't, it's like, you can't rent somebody your 1997, Geo Tracker or whatever, you know what I mean? You gotta whip out something badass, man.
The fact that you just totally dated yourself with a 1997 Geo Tracker.
Yeah, well, I'm 42, man, so.
I'm 43. Dude, the Geo Tracker. Geo Tracker's a funny vehicle.
So that was the thing, I scaled, our parasales photos from we went from when I first came on the scene, they were using Sony Mavicas, and we went from about, as a company, maybe 150,000 a year to just over 400,000 a year in total for photo sales, because that's a big thing for parasailing and for skydiving. Everyone buys the photo packages. It is a once in a lifetime experience for a lot of people, and it's a bucket list item.
Question for you though is, when they book, do they book the photo package as well?
So now Fair Harbor does offer that. You can do that as an add-on, but we were like, man, I gotta We were like old school, man. Like we had it down to like a science, and without getting like too far into it, like just from like customer behavior, I figured out pretty quick that there was like a whole methodology how you could just get everybody on the boat to buy photos because, like you mentioned FOMO. So it was one thing we found out real fast and we always wanted to get people to agree to it as well. So our mates would talk to, the people on the boat and we would just get that one, the first person, whoever was going to go up first, we wanted to make sure that they were really excited about parasailing. They were really excited about purchasing the photo package. And then we could start our whole show because that's how we made our money. That was our whole thing. We got paid horribly by the owner, but the photo packages were 100% ours. So it was obviously in my best interest to optimize that the best I could. And that's sort of like what I figured out is that we could get the whole show started and we want, as an owner, it's a little bit different when you're basically like a salesman or a sales manager. We mentioned it earlier too. There's so many things that are like happening that are like connecting this puzzle together. I'll have it in a second, but you
hang on,
like,
Kevin, let me ask you a direct question because like I said, I don't have this figured out. We're currently testing something I'd like to get your guys' opinion on as well. But in this particular case, did you always have two people on the boat and one could optionally always take photos? Correct. Or is it, okay, perfect. See, this is our dynamic. One road captain and to do his job effectively and engage in a safe environment, we don't think we can do the next level of videography or photography that we need to actually sell the photos. We think they're great and they're great social, but we're afraid that travelers' perception is that if they're going to pay for photos, it needs to be like wedding photographer quality. Maybe that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, to a point, and it's like when you're talking about like quality or whatever, I mean, there's just going to be certain things that, somebody on the side that's their specific job is going to be taking photos. Like they're going to be able to capture these moments that nobody else can capture, including your road captain, because he's doing double duty. So his job first and foremost is to make sure everyone's safe and that everyone's having a great time. When you have someone that's delegated to the sole purpose of taking photos, like they're never going to miss those candid moments. And that's truly, in my opinion, the trick of getting those quality photos, like you said. And it wouldn't even necessarily be staged. And then, I've never been on your trip.
We have had good luck in private party situations where they ask us, and private parties are often booked with talking to us. And when they do that, they'll ask, and then we actually have a for-hire photographer that we'll use. In that situation, it works great. They actually ride separate on the back of one of the bikes, and they get great footage, and it's totally worth it. To add that as far as to have that person on standby or to change our flow, I think would increase our overall costs. But I'm not adverse to it. So it
depends on what you sell them for. So we had a point at which nobody thought you could ever get more than $25 for a photo package per flight. And when we got done, we were charging $60 during holiday weekends. And now we had basically a dynamic pricing model for how we did photos.
Did you print photos on premise, or what was the delivery mechanism?
Oh man, you're going to laugh, man. But, I was very hard pressed to be pulled away from CDs. We actually burned them at a standalone burner on the boat, put it in an envelope and gave them on the boat. It got done. And so what happened was one of our mates found a whip that goes into their phone. You take your SD card in, you pop it into this SD reader and uploads them straight to their phone. Because the thing was the idea was they had to walk away with them in their hands. Like that was we found it was such an important thing.
Okay. I'm gonna send the guys researching. Here's photos. I mean, you guys can edit all this out, but now I'm curious.
That's what Greg loves most about this show, all the editing.
Editing. Let's bring it home.
Okay.
'Cause I got one more thing. Obviously with a small bike tour, you don't have a call center to answer phones for, I'm
pretty proud of it.
Yeah, so expound on that, because I thought this was a really cool hack to, for especially small businesses that are probably listening right now.
Yeah, to build off the measure piece, you measure every penny, right? When you're small, right, and every expense, a few $100 phone system a month, is expensive just in the technology or service. And then a reservationist that's full time is, fairly expensive. And a lot of people have, dual duty. right? But that's often not a great experience, because if you're telling people that they should call and that person can't pick up the phone, you don't look professional, right? And we straight up couldn't afford a complex and expensive phone system, and we couldn't afford a full-time reservationist. So we used Google Voice, $5 a month, and it has SMS built right in. We took our director of marketing, who has great customer service capability, but just not willing to pick up the phone all the time and get his normal job done, right? It's just too distracting. However, he can manage a number of conversations on his computer via a browser and text message. So here's what we did. We took all of these weaknesses and we flipped them over to an inexpensive phone system, which is Google Voice, and which gives you text message via any device you've got, as well as a browser. Which is very fast because we can copy and paste links and instructions and common things to communicate with our customer. And then our voicemail. This is something we may want to put in actually play the recording of the voicemail. But if you call your bikergang.com hotline, it actually goes through an elaborate. First of all, it tells you stop. No one's going to pick up the phone. Right. And because it's a biker gang, we could be kind of gruff. Essentially, we're telling you that, biker gang's already on the road and we're not going to pick up the phone while driving. Best way to get to us is text. We'll get back to you as soon as we can. And we go through this elaborate spiel involving the last known payphone, a carrier, there's a carrier pigeon involved. It is the longest voicemail thing you can hear. And you can leave a voicemail if you want to wait till 4 minutes. And all of our voicemails that we receive we listen to every single one. And 9 times out of 10, they're just people laughing. And we're doing it all to build on our shtick and turn something that honestly would be just really disappointing into something that's funny and engaging. And immediately they text and they get a great response and a timely response. So we drive everyone to text. Even existing customers who have an existing reservation and want to change it. When they leave a voicemail, you don't want voicemails. Voicemails are hard to maintain, hard to manage, even if you transcribe them these days. And when someone leaves a voicemail, they're like, hey, cancel my reservation. They assume that that's done and that that's the end of it. No. There's policies and things like that. They need feedback. It needs to be two-way. So stay away from voicemail. It's an abyss of information. And
I got to jump in. I got to stop you. What do you think? All right. So, and I know, man, it's maybe a little bit old school, but I feel like it's making a return. What about redirecting them toward email?
So you can, but the text message is so much faster and the read rate is higher. So as a business owner, you often need a response. So you don't want it to sit in their email for an hour or two. So if you can get a more quicker response, then that's going to help you lock it down. So if you're saying, hey, does 3 p.m. work for you? Right? You don't want to wait for an hour. So it's to your benefit to get something this time. But I think if that's all you have, then use it. But
yeah, man, and I know there's a couple different products. It's funny. It's we do talk about digital marketing, and there's so many of these great products out here that I just because I fall into the butcher baker, we're finally hiring out a little bit more of a team. But there's so many things like that. And in the beginning, you're so quiet. I'm being so quiet because I'm oh my God, Ryan, stop mentioning all this stuff. You're giving me so much stuff to do. That's going to make my life easier. But I guarantee you so many of our listeners out there that are that realistically are sitting in my same seat, just trying to write down all this stuff. Oh man, I know I got to do this. I know it'll make my life easier. And this new thing I have to learn and this new book I have to read because instinctually I absolutely know what you're saying. But I fall into that category of well, I have a voicemail that says something similar, but I steer them away from text because I'm the one who has to answer the text. I'm the one that has to answer their Facebook message. I'm the one that has to answer their GMB inquiry. And I know that there's a product that would, there's products out there that put all of those in one silo and, I can answer them all in one, instead of having 3 apps on my phone or whatever. And that's great, but still it doesn't matter. I'm still answering all these texts.
Mm-hmm.
So I always direct them to our voice or to email because then, yes, we can get them a more timely response. But unfortunately, it has to be on my time because I don't have that, that team built out. So do you have, what would be your recommendation for somebody that is in that position that's a little bit more of a smaller business that doesn't have a director of marketing or doesn't have, that staff?
If you're essentially one man show, right? Deep sea fishing captain, you got an amazing boat and you've been doing this forever, you're an amazing fisherman, but you're not a reservationist, right? I would absolutely send them to text message. Even something like Google Voice, but I would do an auto respond to say, I'm sorry, I may be out on the boat. You can expect to hear back from me, before 8 a.m. or after 5. So what I'm saying is set their expectations, right? The voicemail.
Or hope that they have an online booking platform, or at least an online calendar that's updated that they can immediately send someone to, in lieu of responding to them right away. So, So Ryan, real quick, we're getting to about time here. Is there any books that you recommend for somebody looking for more tips and hacks?
So a lot of the stuff, because I'm in the software world, a lot of my expertise in books come from that world. So we're going to be boring as hell for any of you guys to read.
Is one of them the Checklist Manifesto?
It is not, but I'm not saying it shouldn't be. The things that have really inspired me is, namely, I would argue that a lot of people are afraid of delegation. I would tell them to read Tim Ferriss's 4-Hour Workweek. Although I can't say what Tim says is gospel, I think he's an incredibly intelligent OCD entrepreneur. Most of his stuff his discoveries are amazing, but my disagreement with him is his sample size is generally 1 of his tests, Tim. So I'd say take what he says with a grain of salt, but he's an amazing author, great business person, and I listen to his podcast as well. He's an amazing individual. But what I would encourage you to do in the 4-Hour Workweek is, it's an easy read, it's fun. I would encourage and challenge you to get a virtual assistant and or delegate heavily. Figure out what in your business really, really matters and what honestly doesn't. So if you don't feel that you're willing to take that reservationist reins out of your hands and give it those reins to somebody else, recognize what that problem is. Like, you give someone the authority to go make any changes, any reservation things, make the customer happy up to a limit of, say, $200. You don't have to hear about it. You're only ever going to hear about items that are bigger than $200, and just give them the reins to do that. Now, you have to measure these things, right? But I would say delegate. Learn to delegate well.
Yep. So, Ryan, how can people find you? If you have any questions or comments?
LinkedIn's always easy to find. RyanTurner.com is an absolutely pretentious way to find me. But like I said, I'm nerdy. So I'm pretty easy to find.
Ryan, we appreciate you coming on the show, and I'm sure I'll talk to you in 30 minutes.
Back at Trip Shock.
All right, that's all. That's a wrap. Thanks for listening, and keep it awkward.
You've been listening to the Awkward Watersport Guys podcast. If you're in the water sport industry, this is the podcast that brings the business perspective to parasailing, jet and ski boat rentals, sailing, snorkeling, and everything else. We hope you've gotten some useful and practical information from this show. Be sure to sign up to our email list at watersportpodcast.com and subscribe in your favorite podcast app. We'll see you next time, and thanks for listening.